If you had invested $10,000 in Apple at the beginning of the smartphone revolution, that single decision could have quietly transformed into hundreds of thousands of dollars over time, not because of luck, but because you aligned yourself early with a massive technological shift that reshaped how the world communicates, works, and lives. A similar story played out more recently with Nvidia, where investors who recognized the early signals of the AI boom, especially after the rise of generative AI tools, saw their capital multiply at a pace that traditional markets rarely offer. These moments are not common, and they rarely feel obvious when they are happening. In fact, they often feel uncertain, controversial, or even risky at the time. That's exactly why most people miss them. Today, we may be standing at the edge of another such shift, one that is still underappreciated, but rapidly gaining momentum. The emergence of quantum computing as a real, investable sector. To understand why this moment matters, it's important to look at how quickly narratives can change when underlying technology begins to mature. At CES 2025, Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang made headlines by stating that practical quantum computers were likely still 15 to 30 years away. Markets reacted immediately and harshly. Quantum computing stocks, including IonQ, Rigetti Computing, and D-Wave, experienced significant declines, in some cases losing a large percentage of their value in a single day. For many observers, this seemed like confirmation that quantum computing was still a distant dream rather than a near-term opportunity. However, what followed in the months after that statement tells a much more interesting story. Within a surprisingly short period, Jensen Huang's tone began to shift. At Nvidia's G2C event and subsequent appearances, he started emphasizing that quantum computing was approaching an inflection point and that real-world applications could emerge sooner than previously expected. Nvidia even hosted its first dedicated quantum day, signaling a clear strategic interest in the space. This kind of rapid change in messaging from a leader known for measured and calculated statements is not something to ignore. It suggests that new information, new breakthroughs, or new internal assessments have significantly altered the outlook. When a company like Nvidia begins investing resources into enabling a technology rather than dismissing it, it often indicates that the technology is transitioning from theory to practical relevance. That transition became even more evident when several major developments occurred almost simultaneously, creating a cluster of breakthroughs that collectively pushed quantum computing closer to real-world utility. One of the most significant developments came from Nvidia itself, which introduced an open-source framework designed to integrate classical GPU computing with quantum systems. This hybrid approach is crucial because it reframes the future of computing not as a competition between classical and quantum systems, but as a collaboration between them. GPUs can handle error correction, optimization, and orchestration, while quantum processors tackle specific computational problems that are infeasible for classical systems. This synergy dramatically increases the likelihood that quantum computing will be adopted incrementally rather than waiting for a complete technological overhaul. At the same time, IonQ achieved a milestone that researchers have been pursuing for decades, successfully connecting to separate quantum processors so that they function as a unified system. This advancement addresses one of the most fundamental challenges in quantum computing, which is scalability. Building a single quantum chip with thousands of stable qubits is extraordinarily difficult, but networking multiple smaller systems together offers a more practical path forward. By demonstrating that such interconnects are possible, IonQ has effectively shown that scaling quantum systems may be an engineering problem rather than a theoretical limitation. This distinction is critical because engineering problems, while difficult, are solvable with time, capital, and iteration. Meanwhile, Rigetti took a different, but equally important step by making its quantum hardware accessible through Amazon Web Services. This move transforms quantum computing from a specialized research tool into a service that developers, researchers, and enterprises can experiment with directly. Cloud access lowers the barrier to entry, accelerates learning, and fosters the development of real-world applications. It also mirrors the early days of cloud computing itself, when access to scalable infrastructure enabled a wave of innovation that gave rise to entirely new business models and industries. By placing quantum computing in the cloud, Rigetti is effectively seeding the ecosystem that will determine how this technology is used in practice. To fully appreciate the significance of these developments, it's helpful to understand the fundamental difference between classical and quantum computing. Traditional computers operate using bits, which can exist in one of two states, 0 or 1. Every calculation, every application, and every digital interaction ultimately reduces to these binary operations. Quantum computers, on the other hand, use qubits, which can exist in multiple states simultaneously. Due to a property known as superposition, this allows quantum systems to process a vast number of possibilities at once, rather than sequentially. Additionally, qubits can become entangled, meaning the state of one qubit is directly related to the state of another, even across distances. These properties enable quantum computers to tackle certain classes of problems such as optimization, molecular simulation, and cryptographic analysis with a level of efficiency that classical systems cannot match. However, this power comes with significant challenges. Qubits are extremely sensitive to their environment, and even minor disturbances can cause errors or loss of coherence. Maintaining stability long enough to perform meaningful computations is one of the central challenges in the field. Different companies are approaching this problem in different ways, leading to a diversity of architectures and strategies. This diversity is both a strength and a risk for investors, as it increases the likelihood that at least one approach will succeed, but also makes it difficult to predict which one will ultimately dominate. From an investment perspective, the quantum computing sector is still in its early stages, which means it offers both substantial opportunity and considerable risk. Companies like IonQ, Rigetti, and D-Wave represent different bets on how quantum computing will evolve. IonQ focuses on trapped ion technology, which offers high-quality qubits with lower error rates, making it easier to maintain coherence over longer periods. Rigetti uses superconducting circuits, which can operate much faster, but are more prone to errors, requiring sophisticated error correction techniques. D-Wave, on the other hand, specializes in quantum annealing, a more targeted approach designed for optimization problems, and already has commercial customers using its systems for specific applications. Each of these approaches has its own advantages and limitations, and it is entirely possible that multiple architectures will coexist, each serving different use cases. This is similar to how CPUs, GPUs, and specialized accelerators coexist in modern computing environments, each optimized for particular types of workloads. The emergence of hybrid systems that combine classical and quantum computing further supports this view, suggesting that the future of computing will be heterogeneous rather than dominated by a single paradigm. One of the most important factors to consider when evaluating these companies is their current stage of development. Revenues in the quantum computing sector are still relatively small compared to established technology industries, and many companies are not yet profitable. This means that traditional valuation metrics may not fully capture their potential. Instead, investors often focus on factors such as technological progress, partnerships, customer adoption, and available capital. Strong balance sheets and access to funding are particularly important, as they determine how long a company can continue developing its technology before achieving sustainable revenue. Another key consideration is the role of government and institutional support. Quantum computing has significant implications for national security, particularly in areas such as cryptography and secure communications. As a result, governments around the world are investing heavily in research and development, as well as forming partnerships with private companies. This support can provide both funding and validation, but it also introduces dependencies that may influence the pace and direction of development. Looking ahead, the growth potential of the quantum computing market is substantial. Industry forecasts suggest that it could expand dramatically over the next decade, driven by advancements in hardware, software, and applications. As more companies and developers gain access to quantum systems, the range of use cases is likely to expand, creating new opportunities for innovation and commercialization. However, it is important to recognize that this growth will not be linear. The path forward is likely to include periods of rapid progress, followed by setbacks and recalibrations as the technology matures. For investors, this creates a classic high-risk, high-reward scenario. Entering the market early offers the potential for significant returns, but it also requires a tolerance for volatility and uncertainty. Diversification can be a useful strategy in this context, as it allows exposure to multiple approaches and reduces the impact of any single failure. At the same time, maintaining a long-term perspective is essential, as the full impact of quantum computing may take years to materialize. Ultimately, the emergence of quantum computing represents more than just a new technology. It represents a shift in how we approach complex problems and computational limits. Just as the internet transformed communication and AI is transforming data-driven decision-making, quantum computing has the potential to unlock solutions that are currently beyond our reach. Whether it becomes a foundational pillar of the global economy or remains a specialized tool for specific industries will depend on how these early developments evolve. What is clear, however, is that the groundwork is being laid today. The combination of technological breakthroughs, corporate investment, and growing accessibility is moving quantum computing from the realm of possibility into the realm of practicality. For those willing to engage with the complexity and uncertainty, this moment offers a rare opportunity to participate in the early stages of a transformative shift. As history has shown, the greatest returns often come from following the crowd, but from recognizing change before it becomes obvious.